Hi there, my name is Amanda Sanson, and today I'll be talking to you about NLTK, which is the abbreviation for Natural Language Toolkit. On our agenda, first we will talk about NLTK, then we will get into some background information like some of the difficult terminology and significant elements. Then I'll talk about Python and what it is and why it is used by NLTK. Then we'll end with a conclusion, a wrap up, overview, and some other resources that you have to be able to use to explore this topic even further. So, what is the Natural Language Toolkit? It is a suite of libraries and programs for symbolic and statistical NLP for English. I'll explain that next. It ships with graphical demonstrations and sample data. It was created in 2001 as part of a computational linguistics course in the Department of Computer and Information Science at the University of Pennsylvania. Then it became a community driven project. It is free and open source software. So the source code is under the terms of the Apache License version 2.0, and the documentation is distributed under the terms of the Creative Commons Attribution Non Commercial No Derivative Works 3.0 United States license. So you can use this completely and utterly free, no payment. It's kind of like when you're going into Google Images and you can drop down that kind of tool to be able to make sure that the images that you're using are Creative Commons. It's the same concept. Now, NLTK is a leading platform for building Python programs to work with human language data, which I will get into more a little bit later in this presentation. Um, but what's great about the NLTK is it was originally developed to make it feasible to cover a substantial amount of theory and practice within a single semester course, even if students have no prior programming experience. And that comes directly from Mr. Bird, who wrote the book available on NLTK.org for free. So you don't have to go out and buy the NLTK um, book, you can just go to the website and read it for free and learn everything you need to know about the Natural Language Toolkit. So, the Natural Language Toolkit was designed with four goals in mind. The first is simplicity, to provide an intuitive framework along with substantial building blocks, giving users a practical knowledge without getting bogged down by what they called tedious housekeeping associated with processing annotated language data. Then there's consistency, and that is so that you have a uniform framework, consistent interfaces and data structures, guessable method names, things that are consistent with the English language are applicable to NLTK. And even though I keep saying English language, it is also modified to work with other languages like Portuguese and Spanish and other things like that. So it's not only for the English language. Then you have extensibility, which provides a structure to where new modules can easily be accommodated and expanded, and it can be modified for the task at hand. And then you have modularity, so that way you can use different modules without needing to understand every component of the toolkit. So if you're going in and you only need to list a bunch of data, but you don't want to do it manually and anything. You can input the list that you want with terms that are familiar to you to break it down into a list and it will spit it back out to you. But you don't have to know how to do tagging or anything else that is available to you in the natural language toolkit to be able to use components of it, which is very good and easy for people who are not familiar with coding or programming or anything like that. So, for our background information, we're going to go over some key terms that you're going to need to know before we move on to what Python is and how NLTK works with it. So, natural language processing is exactly what you think it is. Natural language is how we humans communicate every day. Languages like English, Hindi, Portuguese. The natural language is a complex structure that the computer has to be able to understand, and that's why it's considered high level language. Low level language is something that you might be familiar with binary code. Then you have the programming language, which are the tools we use to write instructions for computers to follow. So it's like you entering exactly what you would say to the computer in a command prompt, it being able to understand the terminologies you're using and spitting out the desired result for you in your own language. It's a translator, really. And then we also need to talk about something that is actually relatively new. It's called computational linguistics. It is an interdisciplinary field concerned with the computational modeling of natural language as well as the study of appropriate computational approaches to linguistic questions. So it's a field that focuses on making the natural human language usable by the computer programs. That's really all it is, and that's what NLTK with Python does. It allows the user to be able to talk directly to the computer in a simple language, the computer able to understand that language and respond in kind, which I will go into next. Now, Python is similar to what you may have heard about JavaScript. It's on the same platform as that. It is an interpreted, object oriented, high level programming language with dynamic semantics. So, it was chosen by the authors of NLTK because it has a shallow learning curve, its syntax and semantics are transparent, and it has a good string handling functionality. And what is also nice is everything that Python releases is open source, just like NLTK. And that was important to these authors is that they make coding as accessible and open to the average user or anybody who has any experience on a computer as possible. Um, Now, it is heavily used in industry, scientific research, and education around the world. Python actually is used a lot by libraries and educational institutions. It is a simple yet powerful programming language with excellent functionality for processing linguistic data. It is the preferred method for somebody who has never looked at coding, who is trying to learn from the natural language toolkit to be able to learn. And it has guides and help and videos out the wazoo to be able to help somebody learn how to code. For example, Python uses print, if, input, and while statements, all words from the English language to form instructions. In fact, instructions often look like abbreviated English sentences, which is what was so important to the developers of NLTK. Now, to look at the Python interpreter. The Python interpreter is a simple graphical interface called the Interactive Development Environment. So it's abbreviated on your computer when you download Python software as idle. And it comes up as this command prompt, and you just put in exactly what you're looking for, like, or a body of information, and the interpreter goes to your computer, says, "This is what we're trying to work out," and brings it back to you. It just tells you exactly what you want it to. So if you look at this example to the right, this programmer is just entering words from the natural language. Python translates it. The machine gets it in its code, in its language, and then goes back to the translator and interprets it back to the user. It is very wonderful. Now I'd just like to briefly go over through NLTK models and examples of its functions with Python. Some of these examples are showing how you can tokenize, which is a tool that performs segmentation work. It cuts large text into tags called tokens, and those tokens correspond to a linguistically unique and easily manipulated label. And that's how you'll be able to search through words and shrink data down into a way that's easier for you to process, and the computer will do that for you. Then you also have importing information in large bodies of text from the NLTK that the Python will do. So you'll just do import, say whatever the file is you want, and it will pull all of that information from that library for you. You don't have to manually go in and download it. And that also applies to large bodies of work and large bodies of text. It'll also search through that. It will count vocabulary. It will generate an index list for you. The capabilities to be able to manipulate data in the NLTK modules with Python is virtually endless, depending on what is available in that library. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to put it all together. I wanted you to see yourself as the person in the beginning inputting your own words into the NLP, which is using the NLTK with Python to process it, translate it for the computer, and then that purple screen is the computer coming back in your language to let you know your solution exactly what you wanted it to be. In conclusion, the Natural Language Toolkit is an open source library of information that uses Python to extract and manipulate raw data, aka text, in a way that is easier for new programmers to understand and sort material. So anybody who's new to coding can use this to be able to use terminology they are already familiar with and know that it will be translated by Python and NLTK into the computer, and then the computer will understand it and spit back the information in your language, which is simply the best for anyone who is just not code savvy. Thank you very much for tuning in to this presentation on the Natural Language Toolkit. These are the works cited that I use in further sources, which includes the free book called Natural Language Processing with Python, written by Stephen Bird, Ewan Klein, and Edwin Loper, that is available on the naturallanguagetoolkit.org website. So you go to nltk.org/book, and you'll be right there to learn more in-depth information, see other examples, even some practice for you to be able to code yourself if you'd like to get into it. There's also more information on Python and some of the breakdown with programming languages and tokenizers, really anything you need to know. Thank you and have a great semester.